So I've always been into extreme sports, really,
Yes.
and the martial arts was one of those, particularly the MMA and that sort of thing. And I've been into, for years I've been into snowboarding, surfing, any board riding, skateboarding, all that sort of stuff, caving, scuba diving, anything kind of with an element of danger or things like that. Has always drawn me to those. Climbing, mountaineering. I was part of a mountain rescue team for about 15 years. So again, these things have kind of attracted me. And I think the reason that I like extreme sports is it forces you to be in the present moment, because the stakes are so high, and you have to have this kind of laser point of attention. You're clinging on to an idea or an expectation of society or family or friends or whatever. And I think when you start to let go of expectation, all of those things, you start to kind of get clarity on things. And I think we can, and in our physical and on our emotional level, this sort of tightness in the body and the mind. And then when you can release that, the opposite to kind of constriction or tightness is expansiveness.
Yeah.
So, in Buddhist lineage, generally the Buddha said there's 4 levels to enlightenment, and the first level enlightenment we call Kensho, and that is effectively to know the nature of the self and the nature of this, how we're part of this, really. And that, again, it's caused offence to some people when I've spoken about this, because my teacher says, he says Kensho it's easier to gain Kensho than to pass your driving test if you use the right techniques and the right commitment.
Hello, Craig, and welcome to Turn Towards Love. Thank you for being here.
Good
morning. Well, I first want to introduce you a bit, because I was trying to think how to do this, because I think your life is so incredibly diverse, and you've trained in so many things, and in all ways you're just giving incredible service to people. And so it's been in ways of at the moment, Coast Guard, ambulance service, and in the past you've got the music background, and then your own business, and then on the spiritual side it's been like Zen Buddhism, yoga, pranayama, you name it. You've covered so many areas, and you've trained in these areas significantly. And I just was wondering if you could walk us through that. But first, my first question that I ask to everyone is, what does love mean to you?
Love mean to me, I think, like a lot of things lately in my life, I think it's letting go. I suppose to me, kind of sums up my experience, or I suppose interaction with that word, and that. Yeah, but the letting go is on lots of different levels, I think.
Absolutely. Wow. That's really profound. It's letting go, and then that's what's uncovered, right?
Yeah, again, I've been listening to a few things and reading a few things about people talking about love recently, and in a sort of yoga tradition, it was saying a lot of what love wasn't, and love wasn't grasping or demanding or expecting or anything like that, really. So it was more nurturing, allowing, and almost letting go of your own needs. I suppose, yeah, that sort of thing, really.
Yeah, lovely. And so when was the last time you turned towards love instead of fear? And can you give an example of that?
Yeah, I mean, this week's been quite a challenging week with families. No matter how much spiritual practice or you think you've made developments or anything, it's sort of close family members that push the buttons and humble you into realizing or reminding you that you're still human, and there's a long way to go in everything, really. And I suppose sometimes when those when those challenges come, it's focusing, on what's important really, rather than practicalities and other things sometimes. So that, yeah, this week had a bit of a thing with my son's sailing adventures that required rescue services to be activated. So it's kind of getting around the, you know, embarrassment and being a bit cross with actions and things, and actually just counting your blessings, going back to, well, he's safe and well, and everything else really. So I suppose that's the focusing on the important bits.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. It is focusing on the important bits for sure. So, and I'm sure many people can relate, especially around family area, because it's like the most triggering points for me as well. But I like the way you use the word humble, because
You think you're making progress, and then bang.
exactly hits you in the face a bit. So
Our greatest teachers,
yes,
our
exactly.
families are our greatest teachers, really.
I'd love you if you could like walk us through, because I know you started from the occultism, kind of the paranormal, ritual kind of world when you were younger, and then it kind of led you on to different things. And can you walk us through that so we can see like your background and how you've got to be where you are now?
So I think the kind of the parallel strands for a lot of my life have been, I've always been a seeker since I was, really young. Started to read. I'd go to the library and, spend hours in the kind of spirituality or the, mystic sort of section of the library. Anything out of the body experiences, NDEs, UFOs, ghosts, anything like that. I was just fascinated in this area, that there's it's not just this. There's another dimension to life, really. I suppose the other thing, when I was young, I started martial arts at school, doing judo, and kind of enjoyed that. So those have been the kind of parallel. Now I've got the kind of spiritual seeking bits kind of always been with me. The martial arts, I had a bit of a break for quite a few years, and then got back into that in probably my mid to late 20s again, really, and have been maintaining that ever since. So those have been the parallels, and they're that kind of seeking on the spiritual sort of path has always been there, and then the martial arts and the spiritual path have kind of blended together, and one's led to one thing and another. It's martial arts that kind of got me into Zen, really, I suppose, and it was as a tool. As a martial artist, you kind of like to test yourself. So I'd been training lots of different martial arts over the years, and I had a gym in Bristol teaching Wing Chun Kung Fu for a few years, and I wanted to kind of test myself. So I'd been training with another club in Bristol. This was back in the early days of mixed martial arts. So there was a club that met on a Sunday morning, and it was pretty intense, sort of hardcore conditioning, and then heavy sparring, really. And it was all people from disciplines. So it's mainly people teaching martial arts in the Bristol area that used to go to this kind of session on a Sunday morning, really. And I kind of liked, I enjoyed, again, the pressure and the testing. So I
Yeah.
ended up agreeing to do a few fights in the early days of mixed martial arts on an amateur level, and it kind of terrified me, really, to be honest. And I felt I needed a bit of help. So I'd been reading a lot about the lineage of Zen and the samurai and the martial arts element of it, and the control of the mind and the emotions, and clarity when chaos is given off around you.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Bristol, had a Zen dojo. The lineage was a Zen master called Teizen Deshimaru, who was from a samurai family. So that was my introduction to Zen Buddhism, really, and the discipline of meditation and stillness of the mind and the body. And so it kind of brought me down, into that sort of path.
And then from there, did you feel like that was a bit more of your calling to go towards Zen Buddhism?
It's interesting 'cause in my sort of path of spiritual seeking, reading, and sitting there and thinking up my own ideas of the nature of life and reality and who I am and things like that. When I came across Buddhism, it was almost like I'd already arrived at those kind of thoughts and ideas, really. So it seemed very familiar
Yeah.
to me. It felt like coming home a little bit.
Uh-huh.
But then when I found Zen, what I liked about Zen was the simplicity, uh, the lack of pretty maverick, really, I suppose, in the Buddhist world, because it's about direct experience rather than necessarily reading sutras or scriptures or knowledge. It's about here's some techniques, explore these techniques, experience for yourself, and gain understanding for yourself. So I kind of liked that. I also, when I was a kid, kind of got pushed into Christianity a little bit and kind of had a bit of a rebellion against Christianity and super organized religions and faith, and had issues all around that as a kid. So the other thing I liked about Buddhism was about almost you don't need any faith. The Buddha always said to test, test his theories, don't take it for granted. So I liked that idea.
Yeah. It's not forcing into something, it's discovering it ourselves, letting it actually
Yeah,
reveal itself to us. That's what I love
yeah.
about it as well. So, because there are so many different paths, and Zen Buddhism is the one of them. Did you know the others before you kind of chose to go deeper into that?
I widely studied the different Buddhism lineages and paths and things, really, and then again, I think what attracted me to Zen initially was the martial arts connection with Zen and the samurai. So, although
Amazing.
I started doing a lot of Chinese martial arts, and explored some of the Taoism and the other side of it. So I quite enjoyed the internal side of martial arts, even though I also was very drawn to reality martial arts, the pressure test, and sometimes some of the internal systems and pressure points and all this sort of stuff. I mean, yes, it's great to study it and it's interesting, in a confrontation with somebody. It's hard enough to punch someone in the face, right? Than trying to find a pressure point and a tiny pressure point and catch it in real in real combat. So there's limitations, but I love exploring the energy systems and internal energy in martial arts and things, really. So, and then I kind of drifted into some of the Japanese combat jiu-jitsu and things like that. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and lately for the last 6 years I've been studying a lot of Filipino martial arts. So it's been kind of like a fluid, evolving journey, really.
Oh, incredible. So, so you all, because then came, I don't know what came after that straight away. Was it because you've done the yoga, you did the pranayama, and you've done the babaji, and you've like studied intensively, and like is like the koans, and you've gone deep into those, haven't you?
And so I'd been kind of looking. So I was going to the Zen dojo in Bristol, reasonably regularly attending, and then kids came along, and that kind of disrupted a lot of things. Moved out of town, lived outside town, and time became
Yeah.
more limiting, or felt like it became more limiting when kids came along. So I'd kind of been looking for a bit of direction and I suppose a teacher, really. And out of coincidence, really, I moved to Cornwall about 6 years ago, and I was looking around southeast Cornwall for any Zen Buddhist people, and I saw somebody was running a Zen meditation course in Lou. So I reached out to them and I said, look, I've got a regular practice, but I was just interested to see, was there a community down here? And they said, well, we'd run in the course to try and make a bit of a community, but we we did our training with this guy in London, that does a bit of an online Sangha, Daizan Roshi. So I got in touch with them and found they've got a dojo in Camberwell in London, and a very online based Sangha. So I kind of got involved with that organization. I'd had a yoga practice and a meditation practice going on for, probably infrequently, but a practice going on for maybe 25, 30 years before now. And when I joined the Sangha, the way they do fundraising because everything's pretty much on voluntary contributions, but the way they raised a lot of finance was running commercial courses on yoga and meditation and mindfulness teacher training. So I enrolled, became a meditation and mindfulness teacher, and it was a course for meditation and mindfulness for health and well-being, so kind of secular course.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that, ran a few courses, and then when I was on that course, quite a few people were yoga teachers, and I thought, that's pretty complementary. And the meditation and mindfulness teacher training kind of cemented my own practice. So I kind of regarded it, rather than doing it to teach, I thought maybe it'll bolster my own personal practice, which it did. And then I went back and did the yoga teacher training, because again, I wanted that to kind of bolster my own yoga practice, really. And then I went back and did another meditation teacher training course, which was more the meditation for insight aspect of it. So I kind of followed those things, and it's kind of, I've been teaching yoga, but it's made my practice more solid. So I'm a regular practitioner of those things, rather than it being, maybe a couple of classes a week, or meditating maybe 3 times a week. Now it's pretty much a daily practice.
Yeah, like a devotional.
And then I've explored other. I mean, again, the yoga, I've explored some of the other aspects of the yoga, because the course is very much from a Zen background. And my teacher always, he said Zen yoga is sort of 3 things really: mindfulness in your practice, consideration of the energy systems of the body, and posture or position, really. And he said if it's got those 3 things in it, as far as he's concerned, that's Zen yoga. So
Right.
So I kind of studied other lineages of yoga, and when I teach, I bring that kind of consideration after postures of turning within and sensing what's happened, rather than doing like a flow class where you don't, flow's great and I do bits of that, but actually having these pauses to be mindful about what's going on, really. And I suppose the deeper I've got into traditional yoga practice, Indian hatha yoga and things, and I've been studying for the last, I suppose, year or so, Ashtanga Vinyasa as well, with a teacher. And again, I mean, you're a yoga teacher, with the postures, it's the more you repeat the postures, the deeper and deeper level you feel what's going on in the body. But that's the secret for me, is that rather than just switching off, thinking about you're having for tea and doing a load of asanas or postures, it's actually, turning that attention right within and feeling exactly what's going on. And that for me is where the breakthroughs have come in biomechanics and other things, really.
That internal intention, and the awareness of literally the subtle body, the subtlest things that are happening. It's so incredible. Yeah, I just I find when we turn within, there's just so much more to explore. And I think that when we approach these practices, that's what we should be doing in every given moment of every day. It's like, how can we relate to everything that's around us the way we relate to ourselves internally as well. There is are we up to date with where
Yeah,
we
pretty
are
much.
now?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, again, I've been exploring some of the Kriya yoga of Babaji, and I've been away and a couple of initiations into their training, and which I found, really, really useful, really interesting. And, I bring that into my practice. So yeah, so that pretty much. And again, I did, I've been interested in breath work as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, from the martial arts side of it, breath work's really important.
Hmm.
and I went and I'm trying to find somebody. I'd been doing some, pranayama is just like a minefield because everyone's got an opinion on pranayama and what it is and what it isn't and everything.
All
And
right.
it's just, I read every book I could find about it, and it's all, it's all conflicting, and there's all sorts of different things. And it's almost like you've got to pick a lineage and kind of go, I'm going to follow that and explore that lineage really. So I found a mutual friend of ours, Vicky Shields, up in Manchester, and I did their course, the Pranayama 100 hour with Vicky really. So I've been enjoying exploring that side of it as well. So I think that pretty much covers most of the things I'm kind of been into on that kind of level, practice level, I suppose.
And what's a devotional practice helped you with, like in your life? Because you get up and you do it every day. And how do you approach that? And what does it mean to you?
I've always been attracted to kind of chaos, really, I suppose, and sort of not really knowing what's going to happen next. That's always attracted me, and I've always had kind of quite a calm, generally a pretty calm disposition, I suppose, for dealing with stress and things that come up. And again, having being a business owner for, I suppose nearly 25 years, that brings lots of hassles and stresses and strains. And I found I had a natural mental affinity, I suppose, for dealing with stress and chaotic situations. But even on a mental level, I would not perceive stress on a physical level. My body would be exhibiting signs of stress. And I think a lot of the practice that I do has been helping hone the mental side, which I had seemed to have a natural disposition for being kind of quite calm under pressure. But it's definitely helped me with my physical side of trying to match the calmness in the physical side of the body with the mental side. So yeah, that's been a big thing. And it just builds up resilience really. If I have a daily practice, it helps me. Even if everything's going great, it's brilliant, because then when things do go in your life that they do, that's the nature of being human, that the practice has given me additional resilience just to bolster myself to weather the storms that life brings us really.
Yeah. And what would, for people who don't have like a practice every single day, what would you say to them? Like if they're interested in like creating their own, because you've gone through so many different areas, it's all weaved together beautifully and it's created this whole practice for you. But there are so many out there. And it's like we do what we feel is really good for us. Like it's like there are so many different opinions, but it's like going towards what is best for the individual. But what would you say is, why is it worth it? And how to help those people?
I mean, obviously everybody's different, and some practices won't suit certain people. It's like with martial arts, is there what's the best martial art? Well, it's not, there isn't the best martial art. It's, they serve different purposes, and we're all different body shapes and sizes and strengths and ages and everything else really. So
Uh-huh.
what was a good martial art for you in your 20s, probably isn't a good martial art for you in your 50s. And I'm pushing, I'll be 60 in a year and a half. The martial arts I'm doing now are not the martial arts that I was able to do in my mid to late 20s. So you kind of adapt. And also I think it gives you an acceptance of the change and the aging and the things that frustrate you in your body. Again, it's using that word humbling really.
Yeah.
It puts a measure on you. In terms of benefiting people, I think you kind of need to feel where you're calling or what you're drawn towards, and then explore those areas. And I think we had a conversation before about using the mind a little bit too much, and we can kind of second guess, and we can kind of
Mm.
problem solve and think about what's going to benefit us on a practical level. But actually, I think you need to listen to, the voice below the neck to kind of see what direction is drawing you and what kind of suits yourself. Use your intuition and then explore those things. But one thing I know doesn't work, and I've seen this countless occasions, is when you decide to walk a path or explore that, make sure you give it a really good chance. Chopping and changing, it doesn't really work. I mean, it's good to try things, but then when you've found the path that you think, you need to give it a good shot, because these progress doesn't happen overnight. It's often darkest before the dawn. You kind of, you need to
Yeah.
kind of give things a chance and give yourself a chance to assimilate and work through these things. But I think the benefit of it all is consistent 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 practice. And it's
Yeah.
interesting, there's been something that's come up in yoga quite a lot recently, the currency of yoga. What is the only currency in yoga?
Hmm.
And the currency in yoga seems to be pretty much commitment, doing what you say you're going to do. That's the currency of yoga. And
Yeah.
by yoga, I don't mean physical postures. I mean the 8 limbs of yoga, meditation, pranayama, dedication, all that side of it
Yeah.
really, and showing up consistently, and again making a commitment and actually doing what you say you're going to do. Your sadhana or your practice or whatever.
Yeah. And no matter what comes in the way, because there's so much, especially now, chaos around us, and it can like infiltrate our minds completely, and our bodies go a bit crazy, and it's yeah, it's
And another
finding.
thing, I'm not, I'm human as well. I make my intention to do a daily practice, and I do something every day. Do I do all of my practices every day like I should do? No, I don't. Again, things come up,
Yeah.
but it's consistency in all of these things really. And it's the same. I've never been a great martial artist, but I've always shown up and I've made
Yeah.
progress. And you see people who are outstanding, who turn up and, a couple of times and they're just naturally gifted. But it's that consistency of just keep on showing up, keep on plugging away. It's the hare and the tortoise, it's the kind of the tortoise that kind of gets there in the end, really, just through keep showing up, keep showing up, keep showing up. I've never been naturally gifted at a lot of things, but I've just kept determination and keep banging your head against the wall, keep going.
Yeah. So what? So has there been through your training? I feel like it's echoing a bit. Through your training, has there been a certain practice that you've done that's revealed so much to you? Like it's really opened your eyes? Because I know you've done a lot of deep practices with questions that has kind of allowed you to sit with that and think about that and not just skim across it. We can, but yeah,
I suppose the things that made the biggest difference in meditation's been my first love, really.
yeah,
I've always loved meditation. I've always loved consciousness exploration, whether that's out of the body experiences, dreaming, different types of meditation, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely
hmm,
love all that. That's been my turning within. That's been my first love, really. So on a daily practice, pretty much without fail, I've meditated every day for years, never skipped a day. And
hmm,
I think that's what's brought the biggest thing, the biggest things to me, really, or insights. And if you look at the physical side of practice, spiritual or whatever, martial arts can be spiritual in their development and practice and things. You can get to that level
yeah,
and really, and pranayama and all the other bits and pieces. And in the 8 limbs of yoga, a lot of it is, why do we do all the pranayama? Why do we do all the asanas? Why do we do all that? And pretty much in my interpretation of it, it pretty much boils down to preparing the body to meditate and turn within, really.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the kind of pinnacle of the practice. And there's lots of techniques and lots of traditions and lots of lineages and everything. And there's some techniques get you insight quickly and some get you insight slowly. And I think for me, the thing I've found for me has given me I suppose the greatest and the quickest progress has been self-inquiry.
That's it. Yeah.
Koans in Zen Buddhist tradition, we have a thing called a koan, which is like for listeners that don't know, it's an often paradoxical question, but it doesn't have to be. And when you meditate, you inquire of this question. And the most important koan or question really, and this just repeats through whatever spiritual tradition you look at, is the question of who am I? It's probably the most important question anyone can ask, really. But when you sit and work on a koan, it's not an intellectual answer. It's a sense of knowing. It's like if you said to somebody, "Can you explain love to me?"
Yeah,
Say
that's
somebody
it.
had never been in love, and you say, "Explain love to me." I mean, Shakespeare, poets, singers, songwriters, have tried to explain love, but you don't really get it properly until you felt it. So it's kind
Yeah.
of like, that's it. So a koan is a bit like that. So you can think about the question, who am I? Like, yeah, I'm Craig, and I do this and I do that and things, but all those things can change, but when all the things that change are gone, what's left? And
Yeah.
it's this inquiry, but the answer never comes from here. The answer comes from below the neck. And I think the meditation practice quietens the voice from, the head, and
Yeah.
allows you to hear the voice from the heart or the stomach, which is a very timid, quiet voice compared to the voice up here. So sometimes I think you don't ever hear the voice down here until you've managed to, turn the volume down on the voice here, and then you start to hear or feel or switch on to the answer. And the answers to the koans come from below the neck. And it's not, and sometimes when you get the answer, you can't if somebody asks you, like with love, you can say a load of stuff and they can go, "Oh yeah, I kind of get that," but you won't really get it until you've
Feel it.
felt it. And I think that's the greatest thing. If you look at Ramana Maharshi, that was his whole spiritual practice. Who am I? That was it. People used to go and sit with him, and they'd gain insight just through being in his presence and things like that, apparently. But again, this self-inquiry, and you look at it through all spiritual traditions, and it's there, this self-inquiry, and a lot of it's been filtered out of some traditions. But when you get to, the truth's the truth, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever, really. But in all of my studies and looking into different pathways, it seems to be, when everything's distilled down, it's this basic kind of truth and understanding.
What's remaining
Yeah,
after
what's
letting
left?
go?
Yeah. And Ramana Maharshi, I mean, his story was at 16. I think he for some reason he thought he was going to die, and he literally just led there and contemplated death and what would be left when he died and everything, and then boom, he just got that enlightenment into understanding the nature of himself. He left home to live on a holy mountain down in the south of India and stayed there for the next 65 years or whatever, really.
Wow. It comes at everyone very differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
unexpectedly.
yeah. And what I love about Zen, and particularly the lineage or my teacher and his teacher and that lineage, is he's desperately, his raison d'etre is to wake people up, to
Yeah.
make people understand the nature of the self, the nature of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, and his teacher, same thing, Shinzan Roshi in Japan, outside his temple, he just had the name of the temple. It's a place of enlightenment, and that's all he wants to do is wake people up. And by enlightenment, people go, oh wow, I thought only
Yeah.
the Buddha and people that are enlightened. In Buddhist, in Zen, well, in Buddhist lineage, generally the Buddha said there's 4 levels to enlightenment, and the first level enlightenment we call Kensho, and that is effectively to know the nature of the self, and the nature of this, how we're part of this, really. And that, again, it's caused offense to some people when I've spoken about this, because my teacher says, he says Kensho it's easier to gain Kensho than to pass your driving test if you use the right
Really?
techniques and the right commitment. Yeah, he says that. And he runs some 64-hour retreats, which is just designed to get people Kensho. And he's got a very, very high success rate. I've been on many of those, and I've worked on them as well as an assistant. And you see people just get it.
Yeah.
But the insight is one thing. This first step on the road, entering the stream, as the Buddha said, this Kensho, it doesn't make you a good person. It doesn't. It helps, but you're not like, that's it, you're sorted. It's just the first step. And the hard bit with any of these things is not the insight, but it's embodying. How do you live that insight and bring that insight into your life? So
Yes.
that's the challenge, really.
So many questions. Just going back a bit, when you sat with the am I, what came up for you? What was that journey like for you?
Well, same with everybody, I suppose. It starts with it starts with what you're not, really. It took me a long time to make progress on the question. In Chinese Zen, often students of Chinese Zen that will be the question they will spend the rest of their lives working on, just that question.
Yeah.
So a koan, you get an insight. That's not necessarily the end of it. The more time you spend with the koan, the deeper and deeper your understanding comes. So I think people getting who am I, you can understand it on lots of different levels. So for me, it was quite frustrating because I went to several of retreats and I could see people getting it and I wasn't, and I was, and then you do the usual comparing yourself and ego and
Yeah.
all that stuff coming up, really. And I speak to my teacher and I'm like, look, I don't seem to be. And then you kind of make progress on it, but it's not so again, everyone's different. You kind of compare it to other people, and some people are having like near mystical experiences and everything's, like, amazing and everything. And mine's kind of like seems to be a gradual thing. And I say to my teacher, and you're desperate, all we want spiritual experiences, not that they're a distraction. They're not, that's not what's important, but the insight is the important bit, not whether you've had this kind of, for 3 days you were
Right.
in a trance or samadhi or whatever sort of thing. It's the knowledge and the development that's important, not the experience.
Yes.
And then I say, I haven't had this kind of light bulb moment. It seems to be gradual. And my teacher said, well, Craig, some people are like a light switch. You press the switch, the light comes on full blast. And he said, maybe you're just like a dimmer switch, Craig.
Just taking that time. But I feel like, but there are everybody has like certain areas where I think, they'll evolve quicker than others. But it's not, I feel like, yeah, I think you're way more advanced in like areas that people with maybe a mystical experience aren't, and it's just that balance, and it's working its way up. It's like those tiny deaths in every moment, those little transformations, like in every moment. And we bypass them for this grand experience. But it's like that that journey and those tiny moments are so what's more important, I think.
I think also sometimes I think if you have the big, mystical experience, then you probably crave the mystical experience again, and then if
You
time goes on
do.
and you don't get it, maybe you fall by the wayside. And I've had a few really really interesting um, experiences of total absorption into things, and that non-dual experience and things like that. And again, they're amazing, but they don't last. And there's a
That's
danger
it.
that you keep wanting to get back. But again, I go back to my other thing: just keep plugging away, keep plugging away, keep plugging away. Yeah, but, for me, and really, I have to find almost my own satisfaction about that. And what it all boils down to, that again, the crystallization of the Buddha's teachings in a nutshell really is about this mindfulness. You're not looking to the future of, oh, I'm going to get this, or I'm going to get that, or I'm going to get samadhi, or I'm going to be enlightened, or whatever. It's just be in the moment and enjoy the practice, and get out of the practice right here, right now, because that's what's happening.
Yes.
And there isn't really anything other than the present moment, because
Nothing.
things can only be experienced in the present moment. The past,
Yeah.
the future. So wouldn't it be funny if there wasn't really future or past? There was only the present moment, because we can't experience anything in the moment other than that, and we can only talk about anything else from the reference point of the present moment.
Yes.
But we defer, and we put our life on hold, and we end up not. And when we're not present in the moment, we're not really living.
Mm-mm.
It's
Not at
a
all.
it's a reminder to reset and come back, and just keep
Yeah.
get the most out of the now, really.
Yeah, those I feel like we all have those core things, like a core lesson or something that we work on through our whole life, and that does keep coming back to us, and we kind of heal it bit by bit, and we open and we open and we open and bit by bit, and then we gradually get there. Like, because when you mentioned about the mystical experience, it's been that process for me of you got to then let go of expectation, wanting or grasping, or focusing, oh, I've had this experience, but then life happened, and you can't keep going, this was a one moment, and that moment is everything, but like every moment it's all one moment. So it's like, it's not thinking of it in the past and in the future and what to expect then and it just is. And it's that I keep coming back to. And so then it could be the opposite of that, of like, you know, if not having it, it's like the expectation or the thing of having it. It's like the exact same thing, but the opposite, but two major core lessons that balance each other out.
Spawn, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. And that maybe that's just what we're here to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yes. I mean, and then you can end up, that whole phrase, spiritual materiality. It's like,
Yeah.
and then it's just kind of,
It's so
yeah,
true. And all the words and all the fuzz. It's so hard to kind of
yeah.
navigate around those terms. Um, just checking. Oh my gosh, there's so much I wanted to say. But yeah, how this is what I find really important as well, is like, how do you feel like what you've manifested in your life, how you've created your life, from your practices? Do you feel like the life that you have is such a stunning, beautiful life? And, do you feel that's manifested from your practices a lot as well? In who you've embodied and the practices that you've embodied and become those practices. And so your life has evolved around that. Do you know what I
A
mean?
difficult question, really. Chicken and egg, isn't it, really? I don't know. I'm trying to think what kind of pushed me and kind of what led me into things. And yeah, one of the other strands in my life, which kind of I suppose we haven't really talked about, which and on this subject of mindfulness, I suppose it's like a forced mindfulness. So I've always been into extreme sports, really,
Yes.
and the martial arts was one of those, particularly the MMA and that sort of thing. And I've been into for years I've been into snowboarding, surfing, any board riding, skateboarding, all that sort of stuff, caving, scuba diving, anything kind of with an element of danger or things like that. I've has always drawn me to those climbing, mountaineering. I was part of a mountain rescue team for about 15 years. So again, these things have kind of attracted me. And I think the reason that I like extreme sports is it forces you to be in the present moment, because the stakes are so high, and you have to have this kind of laser point of attention in those things, that if you get it wrong, then you might not make it back off the hill, or whatever, really. So I think,
It's on that knife's edge.
yeah, that kind of thing has attracted me. So it's almost been a forced mindfulness in those kind of things. And then when your mind has wanders, it goes wrong, because you've got to be kind of on point.
What does that say about you? Because that is a running theme through your whole life.
Yeah,
From everything you've been saying, it's like it's what can take you to that moment, that one
I've
point
always pushed
pushed. Yeah.
the envelope a little bit on things, and
Yeah.
thankfully it's worked out most of the time, but it hasn't, a few times. But I'm still here,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes risk taking, calculated risk taking, risk assessment, dynamic risk assessment, I think that's what's created the lifestyle. Setting up a business, it can be
Hmm.
quite safe being employed. Actually taking the step out of that comfort zone into setting up your own business, and the risks and the uncertainty around that, I think
Yeah.
that's part of the thing that's created the lifestyle. And the other thing, I've never been really financially motivated, and the decisions I've made have not generally been on financial motivations. It's been lifestyle choices that's always driven me, really. And I didn't want a job, I wanted a lifestyle, which is why, on my day job was kind of around, music and creative people and entertainment business and things like that, really. So it's always been, I just want to be around those people. I want to work with those people.
Yeah.
And there's been a bit of a lack of compromise in my life sometimes, when I could have chosen the easy path to comply and to, go along with, expectations of my parents or my dad and things like that, or, you know, rage against the machine and sort of do my own thing and maybe have a bit of a tougher journey, but it kind of works out in the end. And I think I've always, I wouldn't say because it's not about liking, but I've always tried to push myself out of my comfort zone in lots of different levels, really. And it seemed, for me, it's certainly, and it's all cliched, that growth comes from adversity and all these other things, but I really think sometimes when I've put myself in situations that at the time I was like, God, this is awful, I hate it, but from that, it's given me personal growth, I think, and that's what's brought me to where I am today, I suppose.
Absolutely. And that answered the question before with the manifestation. It's like you chose, it wasn't thinking about money, it was thinking, or it's the lifestyle, the what you
Yeah.
wanted. You followed your passion, being the Aquarian that you are. It's like that independence and that willpower to, and the feeling like, there is no other way. You want to live life on your terms in the way that you want to do it. And that then naturally kind of brings everything up around you, in the way you want it to be. And it's a difficult journey.
I mean, yeah, and like I said, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But again, it's it's making the decision in, again, in your life day by day, bringing it in the moment, and prioritizing what's important really. And what was always important um, was that kind of day to day lifestyle thing, rather than, I did student jobs where, I was just doing a job for the money in the week and just living for the weekend, and you get into work on a Monday and you just wishing it was Friday afternoon. And I'm like, there's no way I can do that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And yeah, and you
Yeah,
see a lot of people, doing that kind of thing. And I was
you
like, well,
do.
that's for me.
And
Yeah.
I think like, there's a massive point I feel like from listening to you and the whole of this time and from knowing you. It's the way that, those fiercely challenging, things that you put yourself in purposefully. For me, it shows like how much you trust life and how much you trust the process, or how much you trust something unseen and the unknown, and like how that, it feeds you as well, and it gives you that that motivation, but also shows you how naturally that must be a deep trust that you have there to fall back on. What do you think?
It's not really been a conscious thing.
Yeah.
It's been more a kind of like a self-reliance, I suppose, because never been much of a team sports person. All the sports I've kind of done have been, well, climbing, you go with somebody else, and diving, you have a buddy where you're very reliant on those people, but it's not so it's kind of been, very much a self-resilience or a small team of people in a lot of my life. But in later life, in work, where I've got a team of people, I've in I found that very challenging, leadership and things like that, and never came naturally. I've kind of had to find my way in how do I lead people, and
Yeah.
it was totally outside my comfort zone. Who am I to tell people what to do and do this and everything else. And then for the last few years, I've been station officer for the our local Coast Guard rescue team. So I've got a team of 12 Coast Guards that I have to make sure the team's available to respond to incidents around the coast. Again, it's having my own business running for you know 10, 20 years or whatever has been good. That's given me education, but it's I wouldn't say I was natural with with any of it. It's kind of found my way, and I make mistakes and I learn from it, and try to work that way really. But it's for me, it's been often the principles and the things I've learnt from my spiritual practice that I've kind of brought into my
Mm.
workspace and my leadership, values for people, and trying, because I don't always get it right, trying to care for people and trying to look out for people. So those kind of things have helped. So I guess the whole path kind of helps. But again, it's like, do I get it right? No, certainly not
That's
all the time.
Yeah, and maybe it's so. Do you feel like the more you've cared for yourself is has allowed you to care for others in a different way, or maybe in a deeper way?
Don't know, I've had quite a few issues over the years, and never, for a long, long time, I never really liked myself very much. I've had an issue with that, and then I had a bit of a breakthrough on a bit of self-love sort of thing. And I suppose, I don't know, with all the things that I do, I've kind of been quite a hard taskmaster for myself, I suppose, and I've kind of set quite high standards in certain things for myself, in activities, and I've been quite harsh with myself. And I think that's what's helped with the self-discipline and keep coming back to the training to want to be better, and being quite harsh and judgmental of myself really. And I think
Yeah.
for me, part of the process for the last few years has been self-compassion, and just being easier on myself a little bit, really, I suppose. And then I've started to find, some self-love and appreciation of myself, really. But that's been I think self-esteem issues and, not really liking myself has been a trend from quite a way back, really. And I don't really know where it came from. I haven't kind of got to the bottom of that, really, I suppose.
It's an ongoing journey, that.
Yeah, all of it is, this self-inquiry and learning more about myself and the way I interact with other people in the world. It's a never-ending. Everything is, it's just flux. Everything is in change. There's no end, because it's just everything is just changing and shifting. So it's just moment by moment. So all you can do is deal with what's there and in front of you, and yourself moment to moment.
That's it, mindfulness, everything. So is there, I'm aware of time. Okay, is there anything that you would like to say to humanity, or have a message for people at this time? Like a really important message that you feel like you've learned that people need to hear, because the journey of everything you've been through and going through, can really help people who are also in that process. And it's, such an intense time to be alive. And I think, people might not choose those things that they really want to do. They might fall into and stay in that fear-based life that they're not happy with, and even if they really don't like it, there's something maybe not pushing us enough to get into something we really love. So I feel like that message has been incredible, that through this conversation. But is there something you'd like to expand on that, or have an entire different message?
I think the things that immediately come to mind are sort of, what we talked about initially was what did love mean, about
Yeah.
surrender and letting go. And I think that topic of surrender and letting go has been a recurring theme. And I think it applies across the board, really. Just because people are in a role or a job, or feel that they're pushed into a certain direction, maybe it's because you're clinging on to an idea or an expectation of society or family or friends or whatever. And I think when you start to let go of expectation, all of those things, you start to kind of get clarity on things. And I think we can, and in our physical and on our emotional level, this sort of tightness in the body and the mind. And then when you can release that, the opposite to kind of constriction or tightness is expansiveness. So,
Yeah.
or boundlessness, really. When you can start to, again, physically, I find in yoga and pranayama and the other things, when you can let go of the tensions in the body, it expands. And I think the mind is the same thing. We can be quite closed to, well, I'm so and so, and I come from this area, and this is what's expected of me, and this is my life. Well, if you can start to kind of let go and consider other options, and let go of the the things that you feel are forced upon you by society or people or yourself,
Mm.
then you get a chance to explore other things. And I think the other big thing I think that's so important in society is about service,
Yes.
really, to do things for other people, to serve other people with no expectation of anything in return, really. I think that's an incredible source of happiness for people, to
Yeah.
actually do that, random acts of kindness. I know it sounds cliched, but service for me has been one of the things that's made one of the biggest differences. My history of volunteering
Yeah.
that's been pretty, had such an incredible effect on my life, and totally counterintuitive. When you do things for other people with no gain yourself, you don't realize that sometimes you probably gain more than the people that you're providing the service for, really.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
again, that's the form of letting go, because that counter intuition. Take nothing for granted. Take nothing as fixed. Accept everything is in flux.
Mm,
Accept everything is changing, and let go of any thoughts of anything being fixed or anything being as it is. Just let
yeah,
it, just let go, and see, when you take those scales off your eyes and you see what the world looks like when you've let go of every preconceived thing you thought was there, and see what's left, and see how you fit into that. I think that's the takeaway for me, I think.
yeah, that's beautiful. And I would love to go into all the service that you do now. I know if we had more time, I'd be like, can we go through everything? Because you do give so much service, and I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do for other people. And I know some stories that have come out of the things that you do to help in all of the different ways, and it's terrifying, and it's a lot to see, it's a lot to witness, and you can kind of see how far in the spectrum people can go of, like, from, so where it can take us, and how scary our minds can take us, if we let it, and how important it is to have a devotional practice, and to surrender, and to find that self-love, uncover it, maybe is the right word. But thank you, and thank you for this today. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, that's all good, I think. But yeah, thanks to you for the podcast you've been doing. Actually, I've been enjoying in watching the other podcasts as well. Yeah, so
Thank you.
thank you.
It means a lot. I can't wait to see your future, and hopefully we can have another podcast and talk about that, and where that leads you, because you're about to have a massive change, and it's exciting. All right, well, I will speak to you soon, and thank you everyone watching, and may you always turn towards love. Hello everyone, it's Rachel Iris here. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this episode, and be sure to check out all the details from the guest of this show down in the description box below. You will find all you need to know in there. And if you haven't already, I would be so truly grateful if you could like and subscribe and comment. Tell me how you feel. Tell me what you'd like to see more of on Turn Towards Love. And yes, I would just so love for us all to become a lovely family, so we can turn towards love together in difficult times. So from my heart to yours, all my love.